Doctors, as a CEO of Spinal Kinetics, I hear a lot that attorneys don't understand what a CRMA is. CRMA, Computerized Radiographic Mensuration Analysis, or we could say Computerized Radiographic Measurement Analysis. That's our coined term for our report, CRMA report. That's what we put out as Spinal Kinetics. What does that represent? It represents an independent, unbiased, excessive motion study of either the cervical or the lumbar spine. That's what it is. Now, what does it mean for when doctors have or when lawyers have a question on what is this? It is the absolute greatest opportunity for education to the attorney that there is. Because now you're educating the attorney about the injuries. Remember, there's only 3 injuries that any spine can have. So an injury is a derangement of a part, right? So if I have a skin injury, I have to derange the skin on my arm, say. If I have a tooth injury, I have to derange my tooth in some way. If I have a bone injury, I have to derange my bone in some way. Now, there's a thing called imaging biomarkers, and imaging biomarkers are things found on imaging that lead to a definitive diagnosis. So I can't have a fracture on a bone unless I have a separation of the bone somewhere, unless I have a derangement of the bone. The spine only has 2 tissues to it. It has bone and connective tissue. Now, these are complex tissues. It's a complex structure, but it's only two tissues. And it's got a tremendous amount when it's damaged. It is probably the most expensive injury in the injury market today, bar none. The providers that understand 3 basic things of that injury: how to diagnose it, which means working it up with imaging, how to document it, and then how to actually stabilize it or get really great treatment results, should be the highest paid doctors in the market today, bar none. But if you are going to be in that market, you are going to have to explain what is excessive motion testing to an attorney. And I just explained it to you. Excessive motion testing for the lawyer is very, very easy. When you have a disc herniation on an MRI, let's say the person goes through let's say they're in an auto accident, and now they have a disc herniation on, let's say, between C5 and C6. They have a disc herniation. Now, somebody's going to say that that disc herniation was caused by the accident. You might be the person that's saying that disc herniation is caused by the accident. It's very easy for the insurance defense, and I would say the same thing. You haven't proven that was caused by the accident. That's a pre-existing condition. That has to be. Because you've so underdocumented the condition that I don't have enough data to determine if it was caused by the accident. I just don't have enough data. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. If I took an index finger, my index finger, I took your index finger, right, your left index finger, and I smashed it with a ball-peen hammer right at the tip. You said, I think you broke my finger. You went to a medical doctor, you got imaging done, they said, look, you got a stress fracture in your left index finger. Now, you could say, hey, you caused damage to my bone, you broke my finger, I want compensation. And I could easily say, based on your documentation that you've just given here, I could easily say, sorry, that had to be a pre-existing condition. It wasn't caused by this incident. And you would have a heck of a time proving it. And the reason why you'd have a heck of a time proving it is a ball-peen hammer force does not just go to the bone. Okay, it has to damage the tissue around the bone, or it's not consistent with what that mechanism would leave behind. Remember, there's a mechanism. Mechanism is a force delivery system, and then there's the injury itself. The injury is the derangement pattern that's left behind. A gun is a mechanism. It can cause a bullet hole, right? But it also can cause a scratch on my shoulder. Dog is a mechanism that I can be injured with. They can bite you, but you can be around dogs all day long and never get bit. You can be in an auto collision. You could be in 10 auto collisions and never get injured. So just because you're in a mechanism that can cause injury, it doesn't mean it causes injury, but you should know what the consistent injury patterns are that are consistent with that mechanism. Dog looks like a dog bite. Burn looks like a burn. Gunshot wound looks like a gunshot wound. Compressive and shear force into the spine, very, very simple patterns that are left behind. You have to know what you're looking for. So when you're looking for an injury to the spine only has two parts to it, bone and connective tissue. Bone, you're looking for fractures. Connective tissue, two types. Herniation to the disc, which is what we were talking about. The imaging biomarker is the derangement of the disc that's found on MRI. Imaging biomarker for the spinal support ligaments is an excessive motion in the motion unit. That's what the imaging biomarker, more excessive motion, more damage to the non-disc or the spinal support ligaments, whatever you want to call them. So if I just have a disc herniation, I have a fracture with a ball-peen hammer, but I don't have the skin injury documented around it. So the reason why I could say in this ball-peen hammer analogy that it wasn't caused by the ball-peen hammer is because you didn't document the damage to the supporting tissue around the bone. That force cannot just go to the bone. The force of an auto accident does not just go to the disc. I'm sorry, it doesn't. It never has. There might be a 1 in a million isolated incident of it as an outlier. It has to go through the other tissue that supports and protects the disc. And those are the spinal support ligaments. So without a spinal support ligament test or an excessive motion test, you basically do not have you haven't ruled in or ruled out. You don't have enough data to tell this was caused by the accident. Now, there's 3 ways that I teach lawyers on what to look for if they're going to triage their own practice for a spinal ligament injury. Good, there's 3 things they're looking for. First and most important is a negative MRI, but the patient has symptoms. Most symptoms do not come from the disc herniation. Most symptoms come from the ligament aspect of the spine, which is all the other ligaments. If you don't believe me, go to Medscape. Look at a cervical sprain clinical presentation of a patient with a cervical sprain, and then go to look at Medscape at the clinical presentation of a person with a disc herniation in the cervical spine. You're going to see the presentations are significantly different. Right? So the more you understand that the other ligaments are the most problematic ligaments. I'm not saying a disc herniation is not problematic. It is problematic. But I'm also not saying it to the demise of the other ligaments, because the other ligaments are significantly more important in my world because they cause more symptoms. They cause more problems. So that's what you're going to educate the attorney on. Now, at Spinal Kinetics, we have some educational materials for attorneys. You should call our office. The other thing that you should do, though, is you should always do, whenever possible, you should have an unbiased third party doing your excessive motion testing. That's why I highly recommend, if you don't have an account with Spinal Kinetics, call us. Set up an account. It's very easy to do. And we're very, very eager to help because we're changing the spinal injury market. So my personal goal in getting involved with this is to standardize spinal injury workups. They're not hard to do, especially when it comes to the imaging aspect of it. And so I feel in the future that every patient needs to be worked up the same, regardless of who they go to, what chiropractor they go to, what medical doctor they go to, or what physical therapist they go to. The injury is the same. It doesn't change. So the workup should be the same. And that's what we're doing at Spinal Kinetics. Again, if you need information from us, call us. If you want to set up an account, I highly recommend that you start working with us. Give us a call, and you'll find out just how easy it is to work with us.